You think gladiators had it bad? Think again. The true nightmare of Rome wasn't fought in the Colosseum. It was lived every single day by women who had no choice. Women who were enslaved. Their suffering was hidden behind the marble walls and the triumphal parades. Their pain didn't make it into the history books, but their stories are there, if you're willing to look at the shadows. What you're about to hear isn't just history. It's the story of human beings treated worse than animals, stripped of dignity, forced to endure abuse so cruel it can barely be spoken out loud. Stay with me until the end, because you're going to see a side of Rome you won't believe. And before we dive in, take a second to subscribe. It's completely free to do, but it helps us tell more hidden histories like this one, and it helps our channel grow. Now, let's begin. Rome loved to present itself as the center of civilization. Marble temples, golden statues, roads stretching for thousands of miles. But behind the glory, Rome ran on slavery. By some estimates, 1 out of every 3 people in Italy was a slave. They built the roads, worked the fields, cleaned the homes, and entertained the masses. But what about the women? For enslaved women, life was a prison without bars. They weren't just owned, they were controlled body and soul. Their masters didn't see them as people. They saw them as property. Property to be used, bought, sold, and broken. The nightmare often began at the slave markets. Picture the scene, a crowded square in the heart of Rome, rows of men and women lined up, stripped naked. Buyers would walk past, poking, prodding, inspecting teeth, hair, and bodies like livestock. Women were forced to stand with signs around their necks detailing their qualities, their age, their origin, whether they could cook, clean, or bear children. But those weren't the only qualities the buyers cared about. Many women were purchased for one reason only: to serve their master's desires. The poet Juvenal once wrote about wealthy Roman men who preferred enslaved women over free wives because enslaved women had no rights. They couldn't say no. They couldn't protest. They couldn't escape. Imagine that. A society that celebrated art, philosophy, and law, yet legally sanctioned the abuse of women as normal. Inside the Roman household, enslaved women were everywhere. They were the cooks, the nurses, the maids. Some raised their master's children, breastfeeding infants while their own were taken away and sold. Others became personal attendants, forced to bathe their mistresses, style their hair, and serve at dinner while being constantly humiliated. But the cruelest fate of all, those sent to the brothels. Rome was full of them. Archaeologists have uncovered entire districts of brothels in Pompeii, with erotic murals still on the walls. And who staffed these brothels? Enslaved women. They were forced into sex work, used by dozens of men a day, with no say, no escape, and no protection. Their bodies were commodities. And if they became pregnant, their children were born into slavery too. Another generation trapped in chains. It didn't stop there. Some women were forced to fight in the arena as gladiatresses. These female gladiators were rare, but when they appeared, the crowds roared. Not because they admired their skill, but because they saw them as exotic entertainment. Imagine being torn from your family, handed a sword, and told to fight for your life, all because your suffering was someone else's amusement. And when enslaved women tried to resist, the punishment was brutal. Whippings were common. Branding with hot irons was legal. Some were forced to wear iron collars with inscriptions like, "I belong to so-and-so. If you find me, return me." There are surviving examples of these collars, cold, iron proof of a life owned by another. And if a woman tried to escape, the penalty could be death. But perhaps the most chilling detail of all is how normal it was. For the Romans, this wasn't shocking. This was daily life. And that's what makes it so terrifying. One Roman writer even joked about enslaved women, saying they should be beaten not for doing wrong, but to remind them who they were. These weren't criminals. These weren't enemies of the state. These were women simply unlucky enough to be born in the wrong place, at the wrong time, under the wrong empire. Think about that for a second. The same Rome that gave us aqueducts, roads, and the Colosseum also gave us women branded like cattle, sold like objects, and erased from history. Yet every once in a while, their voices broke through. In Pompeii, graffiti on the walls of a brothel records the names of enslaved women forced to work there. Tiny fragments of their lives, carved into stone, surviving 2,000 years later. We may not know their full stories, but those scratches are proof. They were here, they existed, and they mattered. So why does this story remain so hidden? Because history is often written by the victors. Rome liked to tell stories of triumph, not of the people it crushed underfoot. And when it came to enslaved women, their voices were silenced twice, once in life and again in the history books. But today, we remember. Their lives may have been stolen, their dignity stripped away, but their stories are powerful reminders of what happens when human beings are treated as objects. Hypatia of Alexandria was killed because of her ideas. But these women, they were killed, broken, and erased simply because of their existence. And here's the truth. Rome fell. The empire collapsed. The marble crumbled. But the pain of those women didn't vanish with it. Their suffering is part of history, part of humanity. Ignoring it doesn't erase it. Remembering it honors them. So the next time someone praises Rome as the height of civilization, remember the cost. Remember the women in the markets, the brothels, the kitchens, and the arenas. Remember the iron collars, the whispered prayers, the silent tears, because they too were Rome. If this story shocked you, and if you want to hear more hidden histories that most people never learned, make sure to subscribe right now. It's free, it helps our channel grow, and it ensures that stories like these are never forgotten again. History isn't just about emperors and generals, it's about the silenced, the invisible, the ones who suffered in the shadows. And if we don't tell their stories, who will?